So my name is Ruthger van Zwieten. I work with a company called Picarro. And yeah, to start off, first I have to say what a time it is to be alive. I mean, you know, from the primordial soup to the industrial revolution took, I don't know how many years, but a long, long time. And now from the industrial revolution to where we are now, it's accelerating beyond belief. You know, we got electric cars, AI, and then on top of that we have social media where people can find each other and you know, exchange ideas and really broadcast into the world. And now within this whole very complex force field with changing regulations for EO, we have to find a way to move forward and to find the opportunity within all this risk and to cover the risk as much as possible. And we believe that by monitoring very closely what you're doing, you can turn this threat into a real opportunity. So today I want to talk about the Picarro analyzer, which is actually called CRDS. So this stands for a cavity ring down spectroscopy. So it's a laser-based approach. It's not new, even though this analyzer for ethylene oxide is very new. We released it last year. We've been selling these analyzers and developing these analyzers since 2005. So so we know very well how the technology works. And why did we now decide to make an ethylene oxide analyzer? Actually, the reason is that what we see in the US is that the first facilities that are doing ethylene oxide sterilization have been closed down. There will be a new regulation in the US, most likely somewhere in 2022, so the coming year. And what we see, as Mr. Andrew Gutierrez explained, there will also be regulations at some point in the future, to some extent, for ethylene oxide in the EU. So we have to keep an eye on this, and we have to prepare ourselves to turn this into an advantage and not a disadvantage. So yeah, this is just a recap slide from earlier on. So so basically what this means for a monitoring technology is that we have to be able to measure very precise. We have to be able to measure online. We have to be able to measure very rapidly, so we can switch very rapidly from areas of the factory where it is necessary to measure. And then we can make decisions on what to improve in a process and what to report exactly to the authorities. So this is a very challenging request which we can meet by CRDS technology. So this is just an overview of what was said earlier. So on the one hand, we have occupational health aspect, so protecting the workers. So it's very important to have simple things like having a light above a door, you know, which is either red or green. Can I enter this room? Yes or no? Will I be safe? Yes or no? Those are very simple things to do. Then moving over to the right, we have our environmental emission control, which obviously is very important. So we have to record what we emit. We have to understand how our abatement system is performing, which again comes with some opportunity in the sense that you only have to fix something when it's broken. And you can now tell very early on, you can recognize now the behavior of your system. And very early on, you can decide whether you need to prepare yourself for some maintenance or whether you can continue longer. So you can actually save money that way. Then on the bottom left, we have our data collection and analysis. So you can now basically collect all data from all different areas of your factory and make sense of it and make the proper reports, you know, internal and external. And then, you know, this analyzer is not intended as a standalone system. It's intended to be a component into the whole system within your factory. So it feeds right back into your SCADA system, like SOLSTEO's Crystal Connect, for instance. And then lastly, on the bottom right, we get to optimize the use of these real-time measurements. So we can demonstrate environment health and safety compliance. We can, again, select and introduce relevant information. And also we can explore how this package now can optimize our procedures and help protect the environment. So here is the nitty and gritty. So this is how the analyzer works. Again, this is not a new technology. This has been around forever. And it's actually very simple. So we know that ethylene oxide absorbs light of a very specific color, a very specific frequency. And classically, what you do is you see how much of the light is being absorbed. So you look at absorbance, and then you know how much of the molecule you have. Well, at Picarro, we do it a little bit different. Here we have the cavity, so the measurement cell. So that's a continuous flow going through this cavity. And then in this cell, we have these blue mirrors. And then what we do is we shoot a laser light into the cavity. So we fill the cavity with this laser light. And then these mirrors are highly reflective, but some light goes through these mirrors. So we can actually detect the light with the photodetector. So we fill the cavity with light. We stop the filling with light based on a threshold that is set by Picarro. So laser aging doesn't matter. If the laser is a little bit less efficient, then it simply takes a microsecond or two more to fill the cavity with light. And then we switch off the laser and we measure how long it takes for this light to disappear. Here we have the photodetector signal. Here we have the time, microseconds. And then if ethylene oxide is not present, it takes longer than when it's there. So it's a time-based measurement. And this time tells us exactly how much ethylene oxide we have. Okay, and then just some comparison. So when we started at Picarro with this with this new analyzer, we were wondering, okay, what's currently the most sensitive technology out there? And we identified at that time the FTIR, and then we did a comparison. So we just gave it a stream of some ethylene oxide, or actually we gave it a stream of a gas not containing ethylene oxide, and then we just looked at what's the noise and where does it fall. So in this case, the FTIR we can see here in gray, so it's quite white. And then we have the analyzer called G2910, which is which is intended for measurement at the source. It has a very high tolerance for different matrices. Which you see over there. So yeah, a lot more tight. And then when we zoom in on this one, and we offset the signal by a half a ppb, then here we have again the G2910, which is for source detection. And then here we have the G2920, which is for background monitoring. So in an air-like matrix, so let's say in a community you could find some analyzer like this. So yeah, we're incredibly performant there. And then this is another experiment which we did. So we gave pulses of ethylene oxide very rapidly. So imagine this is your abatement system, and you're tweaking it. You're tweaking the temperature. Then with the FTIR, you don't pick up all these signals. Whereas with the Picarro, because it's so fast, it gives you a very, very high resolution picture of what's actually happening. So I always believe that knowledge is power, and by having knowledge of what's happening in your system, you can actually make the appropriate changes to become more performant and maybe more compliant, depending on where it's going. So yeah, but irrespective of the regulations, I think it's a huge advantage to understand what's happening. Okay, so some key advantages, and yeah, this is a little bit of a marketing slide, so please bear with me. So limit of detection. So here we're at the parts per trillion, or parts per to parts per million level. So we cover a range which is at the very sensitive level. So it's 1 ppm and everything below. Then the ease of deployment. This analyzer is super easy. You can see it here, it's the box. Actually, we have one analyzer at the SOLSTEO booth, so please come visit us and we can explain you a little bit more about how it works and how it's being used. But it's actually turnkey, so you just plug it in and you switch it on and it starts gathering data. There is very little operating cost, so it costs you the electricity, and once per year we recommend to change the filter, and that's it. There's no consumables. Measurement speed, very important. So imagine now you have your sampling system going into the different areas of your plant, all going to the analyzer, and then we can sample from the different pipes with the sample. Within 2 seconds we have a measurement. So this is extremely powerful. So we can have one analyzer for the whole plant. It's very stable. So actually, CRDS is being used in long-term background monitoring. So, on remote stations in the Arctic, Spitsbergen, and you name it. There's one in Switzerland on top of the Jungfrau, and it's measuring 24/7, year after year after year. And these are locations that people don't often get to, to calibrate and stuff like that. So it's a very stable unit. There's no interference, which actually is not true. All laser-based concentration devices have interference. However, within Picarro, we are fully aware of the spectroscopy of all the different molecules that can interfere, and we correct for those. So one of the most famous ones is water. Water always interferes across a very broad spectrum. So what we do is we actually take this water signal, we use it to check the reliability of a measurement on one side, and on the other side we correct for it. So there we can have water concentrations up to 99% non-condensing, and we can measure across the whole range of water concentrations. And then lastly but not leastly, the data is collected within the instrument, and it can be sent to a SCADA system, as I said before. And then you can do with it what you want, like making alarms or making reports or doing research. Okay, and this is actually some on-site data at the customer side. So yeah, here we looked at so at the 2-second measurement interval. So here we have the ethylene oxide concentration, and then here we have the time that we measured. And you can see that there's distinct peaks within the process, and each peak has a reason why it's there. So by measuring the input and then the output, you can better understand what's happening, and how to correlate different aspects. So here we have a typical plant. So the unloading of the primary aeration cell, the secondary aeration room, exhaust deck, the peak shaver room, the technical room, and then lastly we have the CRDS measuring unit. And the idea is that you can feed a sample from all parts of the factory at extremely high flow, and then sample the gas by CRDS. So some key highlights. We have a measurement interval of 2 seconds. Of course, we can integrate for much longer, and then we can have a much better precision. But I think already at the PPT level that we measure at, you get so much information about your system. I think there's no reason to integrate for much longer, but you could if you want to with the same unit. So the precision is 70 ppt. And the limit of detection is 250 ppt. So which is largely within the regulatory proposition that we've seen earlier in the presentation. So you would be ready for this when it's rolled out. It's reference free, as I mentioned, so you don't have to check with calibration gases all the time. Actually, we use the same technology in isolators where we work with hydrogen peroxide. So we've been on the market for more than 10 years there. We never had to recalibrate a single unit so far. And it's the same technology. So it's very stable. Yeah, and then there's some additional high precision measurements which you can have, like CO2, CH4, and water, which are all being used to make this analysis very well controlled. And then, as I mentioned before, this analyzer, when you receive the box, you can unpack it, plug it in, switch it on, it will start measuring. It's that simple. So thank you very much for your attention.